Becker invites you to discover the unlimited power that resides within. He is a lecturer and author of Internal Power.
Several years ago, I found myself at a crossroads in life. I was basically living a very nice, natural, wonderful life according to what most people would see as nice and natural and wonderful. I had a good job, I had a career, things were moving along, going up that ladder, going to school, getting my degrees, doing all these wonderful so-called things. I had some friends, and all these experiences were just falling into place. And yet, I came to a kind of a juncture in my life because all of these outer experiences, all of these outer events that were happening in my life were nice, they were good, but they weren't answering an inner change that was going on in me, because what was really happening is this outer part of me was having a good time in one sense. This inner part of me, my feeling world, the person who I was inside, wasn't very happy. There was a lot of worry, there was a lot of doubt, there was a lot of fear, there were a lot of changes that were going on inside me that I didn't really have expression for, I didn't really have answers for. So I started to go inside. I decided that something had to change, something had to shift. I started to go inside into me, and I started to explore who I really was. Several years later, we're having programs like this that are basically a representation, an accumulation of some of the things that I've come to understand about me, some very practical, very common sense ideas, things that, as I found out from my life, I realized I could turn around and share some of these things to other people in their life. And what we'd like to cover in this program are some of these ideas, because they are very, very practical, common sense, simple truths that anybody can take at any time and use them. The very first section that we'll cover is fundamentals of life. I would like to draw your attention back into you, back into your own self, to that internal power that dwells within you. We're no longer going to be interested about all the external power that we can wield. We're not going to be interested about the things outside of ourselves. For these few moments, we want to go and look at who we are. And how we start with that is by starting with the process of we are what we think, we are what we feel. We are our thoughts and feelings, not just all these outer events, not just all these outer activities. You know, the career is nice, the schooling is nice, the relationships are nice. But if we're not happy inside, it's not happening. Because we don't have that happiness inside, we really aren't experiencing what life is really like. So what we want to go is start with some of the basic fundamentals, some of the very beginning points, some of the places where we can reclaim our power, and then by reclaiming this power, and hopefully the overall subject that we want to cover, of course, is unconditional love. As we reclaim our own personal power, we can maybe begin to focus on love, not just any kind of love, but this really kind of thing that kind of scares people at times is this unconditional love. As we explore thoughts and feelings, we're going to see how we can begin to bring love back into our life. True love, self-love, a beginning point. The very first place to start is choice. Because in fact, each and every one of us have choice in life. Each and every one of us can choose our thoughts and our feelings. We have going on in our minds at any moment lots and lots of thoughts and feelings. In fact, when we sleep at night, it doesn't turn off. We sleep, we dream. These are a bunch of thoughts going on. So the first place to find out who you really are is to turn within and find out what kinds of thoughts and feelings are you entertaining. Back before, in my previous life, before I came to this, which I never ever in my life expected to be here doing this back then. I was doing all the right things. I went through the business school. I went through all the right activities, doing the right things, going through management, what have you. Never in my life expected to be writing books, expected to be talking to people. But I did realize, though, that there was more to life than what I was experiencing. And the outer trappings weren't enough. Choice is what's brought me to this point. Thoughts and feelings were the beginning foundation. They were the very beginning point. One of the easiest ways that I'd like to demonstrate this is with the simple symbol of a chair. It's an object we use all the time. We've come accustomed to chairs. We like them. If we don't have the chair, we have to stand. If we have a chair, we have a nice, comfortable place to sit. what is this chair? Well, it's an object in one sense. And yet, what was this chair before it was a chair? As we see it here, cloth material, some wood, some stuffing, various materials. Before it was cloth and wood, there was a tree, some cotton plants, maybe some steel for some of the pins that go in it. But what was it before that? Before that chair became a chair, it was a thought in someone's mind. A thought held with a level of feeling became this chair. A thought, an image, somebody wanted to create, obviously a very nice object, to give the purpose of being able to sit down. And yet here we're using it as a symbolic reference to what's actually happening in our life. We create our reality. We actually create the things we want through our thoughts and feelings. Thought and feeling first, chair, physical reality second. Everything in our outer world and our physical reality starts with our thoughts and our feelings. The things that we have within our thoughts and feelings are driving and controlling and manifesting our outer world. So where's our biggest point of power going to come? We don't need to be nearly as concerned with these outer experiences as we are with the part of us that's creating these outer experiences through our thoughts and feelings. And, of course, because we're all beings of free will, we have the opportunity to choose. We have the opportunity to choose the very thoughts and feelings that we want. Of course, when I was back there, in that previous time, I was going through, say, in any kind of group moment, time period, maybe 50 thoughts running through my head. I was probably completely oblivious to 40 or 45 of those thoughts, and then aware of like 5, maybe 10 of those thoughts. Well, guess which part was ruling the beta part of my life? Those 40, 45 thoughts were also creating a part of the reality. Those fear thoughts, those doubt thoughts, those anger thoughts, whatever was going on. Personal criticisms, personal opinions, all that energy goes out and it creates a reality for us, just like this chair. Well, you might say, well, chair I understand, but how does that relate to my career or my relationship or to my kids or to whatever? Our experience with anything in life is through our thoughts and our feelings. Our experience through all of what we're having in the outer world is our personal experience, and it's happening from the inside out. The challenge is we have a tendency to go from the outside in. We have a tendency to believe everything we see without realizing that those things are there because of where we're at personally. All of our thoughts and feelings, all the beliefs we hold, gather up and create the outer reality. We see it through lenses, our own personal reality, through lenses of our own personal beliefs. Choice is the first point because we can start to realize that we have thoughts and feelings and we can choose them. We can take a positive thought and we can add another positive thought. Well, we can also take a not so positive thought, a negative thought, a thought of doubt or criticism or whatever, and we can lay next to it a positive thought, and they have a tendency to cancel each other out. Well, the more positive thinking we can put in place, we can begin to shift these 45 thoughts the other way around, and in this block of 50 thoughts, maybe we can be very conscious about 45 of them. Rather than being unconscious about 45 of them, guess what that will do to the type of reality you experience? Guess what that will do with the type of world you want to create? Well, that draws us all to one particular moment in life, because when you have choice, you have responsibility, intent. It's always been there. We'll cover that in a few moments. But you also have the now moment. When is the only and most important moment in life? When is the only and most important moment that you can actually live, you can actually make change, you can physically do something different? It's right now. In fact, when you think about it, this now moment, we're in this now moment. That becomes another new now moment. Oh, now we're in another new now moment. And another new now moment, and another new now moment. And life just keeps going on, doesn't it? Almost seems to want to get away from us. What happens when we're over here in this now moment, and we have, say, a not so positive thought, say a negative thought, a thought of hatred or angry in this particular moment, and we carry it into this next now moment. We've taken this angry thought and brought it into this now moment. Now we've taken this angry thought, and each now moment, until we do something about it, carries anger with us. And we just keep going on, creating more anger, or more fear, or more doubt. What would happen is if in this now moment, We said, aha, I'm paying attention, I'm conscious, I'm aware, I'm having an angry thought. Do I really need it? Is it really what is necessary in my life? Do I have to live this life this way? We say, well, let's change it to more positive. Let's change a negative thought, a personal criticism. Say maybe we're concerned about our weight or something. And we say, put ourselves down. Well, why not say, well, I'm a good person anyway? And already we've kind of shifted it and say, well, it's okay. I can be even a better person, or, I'm where I need to be and be really okay. Well, each time we do that, we're drawing ourselves forward into the future with greater and greater positive reality. We shifted back here so that by the time we come over here in our future, we're carrying now positive thinking rather than the old negative thinking. That's how we create change in life. Every moment, every moment that you can be completely here and aware, pay attention to the thoughts and feelings, self-criticism, criticism towards others, opinions about self, opinions about others. All these negative thoughts, as we shift them and change them, which we are the ones that have to do it, and hence the responsibility, we have to know and understand our intent. Why? Why would we not want to change? In other words, if we can create a more positive future in our future, why would we not want to make change? And if we're coming from a sense of love, which is our main subject here, we can begin to create a future out of love in this now moment. We can choose to pay attention to our thoughts. We can choose to change these thoughts. We can choose to create one moment to the next. Granted, sometimes those moments will come backward. We say, well, here we're doing such a good train of thought. We're real positive. Something comes into our world. That's part of the lessons in life. That's part of what ends up happening to us. That's part of what ends up being a teacher. It's what gives us strength. Life, in a sense, really is a series of lessons. We learn from our experiences. We learn how to use the energy of negative thinking versus positive thinking. We learn how to use the energy that we have within and how to change it, make it grow, and become more, because each and every one of us has unlimited potential. Every one of us has the power, because all these qualities already reside within us. We have the power to be positive. We have the power to be negative. What happens if we cultivate the positive? What happens if we cultivate the love over the hate? And we change these thoughts around and become more of our own potential. Which brings us to the reason kind of why. Whatever I have within, I give out. Whatever I give out, I'm going to get back. It's the circle of life. Well, if I have anger in one moment and I give that out and I'm around somebody, it's very possible I'm going to touch somebody with that anger. And if I touch their anger, I'm going to get their anger back. And it just becomes a vicious cycle without changing itself. What happens, though, if I come from a point of love? I change, say, the anger from one moment to love the next. And then from that love point, I give out love. I'm going to generate more love with all the people around me. Because if I'm coming from a loving state, that's what I'm going to get back. Which means the first and foremost place we have to start is with ourselves. Unconditional love starts with self-love. We have to start doing these things because it's important to us. Not that we're trying to be a better person for somebody else, but because we're creating our reality. Why wouldn't we want to be a better person for ourselves? Because in fact, the moment we do that, we're going to be a better person for everybody around us. What we have within, we give out. What we give out, we get back. Practical, simple, common sense. Well, granted, back then, I didn't have a clue. I did what everybody told me to do, or what I thought everybody wanted me to do. I just followed along. I followed the scripts. I followed what everybody had an image of. And yet what I was denying was my own personal power, my own internal power. I was denying that part of me that had an opportunity to grow. And in this case, my attention was drawn to the love aspect, and I've been learning more and more about what love means and how I can become more and more of my loving self, because like all of us, we're well-versed, well-trained in how to be negative. We know it. We know it really, really well. We know what it's like to be negative. We have that experience constantly. Well, just as much as we have the negativity, and we trained ourselves by lots of little choices. You have to understand, when some of the bigger traumatic events happen in our life, it's a lot of the little choices, the teeny tiny little thoughts and feelings that came and went, and we didn't pay attention to them, that snowball and build and snowball and build. And some of the bigger events that happen in our life seem to come out of nowhere. Well, they didn't. I would like to suggest that they, in fact, started from within. Thoughts and feelings create our reality, just like this physical chair. the relationships that we may be involved in, they don't just happen. You have to be open to and looking for a particular type of friend or spouse or an experience in order for that to come about. It's not until, for example, I mean, if we're not very positive in our own world, we'll have a tendency to be negative. Negativity can breed more negativity. So what are we going to attract to ourselves? Probably more negative people, because positive people won't want to be around us. Well, let's flip that around. If we want more positive relationships and experiences in our life, it's not them that has to change. We do. We have to find out why we're carrying emotional baggage with us. Why are we carrying anger and resentment and criticism through all these now moments? It isn't important. If this is the now moment, and this is the most important moment you will ever have, because this is the moment I can consciously change my thoughts, this is the moment I can physically act on something, this is my point of power. This is the moment where I can make change. Then the past truly doesn't matter. And since I'm creating my future with my now, follow me here, my past, my now, my future. Whatever I'm carrying from my past into my now, I'm automatically making more my future, unless I make change. And it's not necessarily physical change, because what we want to do is change the thoughts and feelings. If you want a different chair, you put in different thoughts and feelings. If you want a different experience in life, you change your thoughts and feelings. And then that means you have to become very aware of who you are as a person. Well, some of us kind of hide from that, because that doesn't always seem to be like, the most exciting thing, because we're so enraptured oftentimes with other people, what we think is an ideal symbol. Where our real power lies is in here, because we are that ideal symbol, because we have as much potential as anybody. We have as much potential to become anything we can become and want to become as much as the next person. And we have that power here through our thoughts and feelings, through the positive thinking, but through the responsibility and the intent that goes with it. Because if we aren't going to accept the responsibility, if we're not going to pay attention to what's our real intent, because sometimes we make these choices and we think we're doing good, and yet the intent really behind it is we're trying to accomplish something, we're trying to get read, or we're trying to get something more out of it than what we're really willing to admit. If we start paying attention to the responsibility, we start realizing, gosh, I'm really creating my reality. If I'm really creating my reality, what kind of reality do I want to have? Well, we always had the responsibility before, when we weren't paying attention to our thoughts. We were just as responsible then, which means what's ever going on in our life, we're as responsible for it now as we were then, as we will be. What we're wanting to do is begin to make this shift, these basic prospects, these basic fundamental underlying ideas, make this shift to where we can become a more positive person. And now we kind of see a framework as to why. Because if, in fact, if we are the ones in charge, we don't have to look for other people or other experiences. They will only be teachers. They will only be reflections in these lessons of life. They will only be examples of the better and lesser things that we want to become. As we become more aware of ourselves, we, of course, put more energy out. We start getting the very things we've wanted. We often die by all the material trappings. We try to look for the perfect relationship, the perfect car, the perfect career, and we find out that those things never bring us happiness. Why? Why don't those material expressions bring us happiness? Because we can't get anything out of something we don't have inside. What we give out, we get back, which means we have to have something within us. We have to have happiness inside us before anything in the outer world would give us happiness. So why not cultivate the one and most important person and activity in your life? Why not cultivate the true power? And then, of course, what we'll go on in the next segment, why not cultivate unconditional love? Because now that we're beginning to put our thoughts and feelings somewhere inside, why not begin to explore what unconditional love is? Because what is the one thing we all seek in this world? The number one thing on all the radio songs that we listen to all the things we see in movies, the relationships, all about love. We sing all kinds of ballads to this. Everybody seeks it, and yet few people are willing to actually address it long enough to find out what it is. We are what we think. The feelings in our life, which is a complement to the thoughts, they work kind of together, but it's our thoughts and feelings kind of in a nutshell that creates our physical reality, which means creates all of our experiences. We have choice in these thoughts and feelings. In other words, we can choose higher and better, more uplifting thoughts. And we have the ability to give out what we have within, which means let's cultivate what we have within. Those are the basic premises. Those are the fundamentals of life. That's the groundwork that we'll begin to lay so that we can go into the next segment of unconditional love. So in this segment, what we would like to cover is this notion of unconditional love. Because in fact, it's the one that trips us all up in the past, in the previous now moment. Unconditional love, for some reason, seems to scare people. And it's this word unconditional. You know, we get the love thing because we think we know what this love thing is. We think we know what love is in the form of sex. We think we know what love is in the form of relationships. Or what we think we love in the form of, we use it as kind of a verb. I love my car, I love my career, I love my whatever. So we've got these ideas about love, and yet we don't seem to want to explore beyond that, because in fact we can say, oh, I love you. And what we're really using is an I love you to somebody, oftentimes, is a hook. We're saying, I'm really dependent upon you. And in fact, I'm saying I love you as a way to keep you in my life, but I really have no clue what that means. So it ends up being rather shallow. So what I started to do is explore the ideas of what does love mean? What is love for me? And as I started to just unravel the notion, I said, well, love, of course, you know, I heard of it, it deals with sex, and it deals with like the relationships, and it deals with the types of experiences that I think are like loving or nice or positive or whatever. And I started to realize, well, no, love is more than that. Love seemed to have an energy about it. Love wasn't just thought. Love was kind of like a neat kind of feeling, you know, like that first love kind of gave you that drippy little noodly leg kind of feeling. That really wasn't love either, but there was a feeling, there was some kind of expression going on that seemed to be more. Not even the thoughts could identify, no, the feelings could identify, because love in this sense is really more of an energy. It's a power. It's a very wonderful emanating power that when we use it, we have these fantastic results. When we experience love, when we actually go for the journey of love, because it is a lifelong journey, when we start to use love, we start to find out, oh, love is things like joy, peace, happiness, compassion, not sympathy. Sympathy has a tendency to, or we've been taught how to use it, right? Sympathy is a good one. We tend to use sympathy because we say, oh, whatever, we feel for the person and their plight. What we're really doing is saying, I believe in your problems, and I'm going to add to them. In other words, sympathy kind of goes, oh, woe for you, and let's go into the woe. Compassion, on the other hand, says, I recognize you as an unlimited being. I recognize that for some reason you've created this in your life as a lesson to learn, to grow, to go beyond. And I know that you can get beyond it. I know that you can become more than that. So compassion instead says, you have a power and you have the ability to become more. And as we sit there with this kind of loving energy called compassion, we become a different type of person. We start to focus on these qualities. We start to focus on the dynamics of, say, like peace, because peace isn't some static, quiet nothingness. Peace is instead very incredible energy. When we're at peace in our heart, peace is an emanating power that just permeates everything. It will silence all kinds of things around us because we're coming from a true state of peace. It's very dynamic. So love in this sense is far more. It's a series of qualities that are very uplifting. So here we're getting a little bit better understanding of what love is. And then comes this word again, unconditional. Let's break it down simply. Unconditional, without condition. Without condition is without limit. Well, now we get a bit better of an understanding. Couple that with this idea of these qualities of love, all these various types of notions, positive notions about love, which is really another way of being, isn't it not? Love in that sense is a way of being. Because when we are some of these qualities, or all of these qualities, we're living life kind of differently, more aware, more conscious, more uplifted, and then sharing much more, sharing more of who we really are. Throw in this unconditional, which is without limit, and you find out that unconditional love, simply stated, simply defined, is an unlimited way of being, which very simply means if we start to live our lives in every now moment without limit, we realize that we have infinite potential, because now we're aware that all of our thoughts, all of our imagination could go to infinite possibilities, then we start to realize that unconditional love, defined as an unlimited way of being, gives us a real practical way of dealing with it. Because it means we can cultivate what it's like to be unlimited. In each now moment where we have some kind of destructive or negative type of thoughts or feelings, and we choose a more compassionate, loving, or peaceful, loving, or joyful, loving thought, we keep changing our thought patterns, and our feelings start becoming more and more loving. As we're doing this, we're making these conscious shifts. We're beginning to experience unconditional love. And it is a journey. It is a lifelong journey. I can't explain it for you, what it's going to be like in your life. I can only say, conceptually, what I've been learning from it with me. As I've been making this journey, I keep finding what it's like to be a little bit more loving, a little bit more unconditionally loving, which is meaning letting everybody, including myself, be unlimited without the opinions and the criticism, all these structures we place on people and on ourselves, because in fact, that's where we get these structures. We're giving them to ourselves, and then we go around trying to place them on everybody else because we don't like them, and we're going to get rid of them. And yet we get rid of them through the act of forgiveness. Again, a very practical notion, because forgiveness is the first and foremost part of where unconditional love hinges. Forgiveness being the, well, whatever was in that past now moment, I can let go of. Whatever was then, I can let go of. Why would we carry it forward? With forgiveness, we have the power to let go. With forgiveness, we have the power to become a new now moment. Say, well, whatever made me angry in that moment, I can let go, and now I can become more positive. It doesn't matter how I got there. What matters is who am I and who do I want to become? And as we make those shifts, we start to say, okay, I just forgive myself, and I'm going to forgive everybody else. I'm going to forgive all the thoughts and feelings that I've had. I'm going to forgive all the experiences I've encountered. I'm just going to let go. Forgiveness is how we do that. And you forgive by just saying, with feeling, I forgive it. I forgive them. I forgive myself. And then say why, because now we realize we create our thoughts, or we create a reality through our thoughts and feelings. Now we want to know, or now we know why we want to do this forgiveness. There's a practical reason. Of course, then we want to also endeavor not to recreate it again. We don't want to bring those habits back up. The true act of forgiveness is to even let go of the habits, because we want to look at who we're becoming. And who we're becoming is an unlimited and really dynamic potential. We're becoming such a wonderful opportunity. We have no idea yet just what all we can flower into, because we're just like a little tiny bud at this moment. Love is the part that unfolds that bud, which brings us to the aspects of love, which sound like their counterpart that don't fit here, which is the first one, which is fear. We'll say, what does fear got to do with love? Well, love and fear are the two driving mechanisms for a lot of us. We either live in fear or we live in what we hope to be love. And I'm about to dispel the whole notion of fear for you. What is fear? We all live it. We all have an experience of it, one way or another. Is fear real? Fear in of itself is a thought and a feeling. Because you say, when that dog is chasing after you down that sidewalk, you say, well, that's fear. What is it going to do when it gets to me? I say, well, wait a minute. Yeah, that might be at that particular moment, but what happens if we were to stop and say, oh, this is a fear thought. Is it really real? Well, number one, the dog may stop. Two, the owner may come out of the house and stop the dog, call it back. Three, if we can stop ourselves and come from love, we may be able to turn around and actually turn to that dog and just love it, and it will just be perfectly okay. We hear three additional possibilities, three additional opportunities that are more than the original one that said it was going to do the imminent whatever. Fear isn't real because there are many more possibilities. However, when we get locked in the fear ideas, we have a tendency to get locked into this notion that it's really real. And yes, I grant you that when you're having experience of fear, it can feel really real. But what is fear really? It's a notion of self-doubt. Because if we're coming from an unlimited standpoint, if we're learning to live our lives in an unlimited way, we have an opportunity to basically say, I don't need to doubt anymore. Therefore, I don't need to fear. I have the power to go and become more than who I am. I have the power, literally, in every now moment, to let go of the fears and doubts, to forgive them, release them, and become what I want to become. Who knows what potential we can muster up at a particular moment out of love. When we have judgment in our life, which is a great catalyst to a lot of the experiences, Judgment, of course, being like we like to point that finger to somebody. And how many fingers are pointing back? When we judge others, we get threefold more back. Judgment's nothing more than thought and feeling. In fact, it's really, judgment is a sense of separation. Separation in itself ends up causing fear. Back to that fear point. Fear, judgment, all opinions, they're all thoughts and feelings. They're not really real, except for the power we give them. Which brings us to detachment. Anybody here have grandma's china in their cupboard? Anybody here bring out grandma's china on Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving? And yet what are we doing with the rest of the year? We're hiding it because we don't want anything to happen to it. The heirlooms that we keep passing along but not wanting to do anything because someday it's going to be worth a lot of money. The heirlooms that we're terrified to give up because of tradition. And yet that inner compelling voice might be saying, well, gosh, why don't you just pass it along? Why don't you use it? Why not get the experience? We are so attached to many of the material things out of fear that we don't know how to experience them out of love. What happens if we can use grandma's china every day because that's the experience? It doesn't matter whether they fall out of the cupboard once out of the 3 times of the year and break, or whether we're using them every day for a year and then something may happen to them. At least in one case, we have the opportunity to use them every day. Why hold on? Detachment works in our relationships in the same way. Why hold on to a relationship? We want everybody to be able to cultivate their unlimited potential. We have to cultivate ours first in order to understand why we want to give everybody else that same opportunity. What about guilt? Anybody here have guilt? Anybody here walk around with guilt? That little self-created tally board that says, oh, I did this wrong, I should have, could have, would have. And yet it is all in the past and nothing needs to happen. We're the ones that are keeping the guilt alive, which means if we're keeping the guilt alive or the worry alive about things that should happen or could have happened or would happen in our future, those are using up and robbing us of this now moment. And it's in this now moment that we have the power to make active change. Very practical, simple ideas. What about living and dying? Anybody here afraid of death? How many of us obsess in one way or another about when we're going to die and how we're going to get there and what's going to happen? What we're doing is we're not paying attention to the living, because if we're living now, we're not going to care. And as we know, through attachment, anything and everything can be gone in an instant. So why not be detached from people, places, and things and enjoy them for the moment, the only moment you have, and get the fullness, because that leads you closer to unconditional love. Why not have the idea of unlimited way of being as be the focus of your thoughts and feelings? So if you do that and you're cultivating that within, which if you've started to notice this little theme, I keep coming back to self, which is where unconditional love becomes effective. Because we can't go around changing other people. We never could. Many of us have tried. Many of us probably still will try even after hearing this. And yet reality is that we can't change other people. However, we can change ourselves. We can begin to view ourselves. We can begin to forgive and release ourselves. We can begin to turn to ourselves. Love ourselves. What's there not to love? It does not matter what package you've come in. It does not matter what package you're in. Because what you think you see in that mirror, what you think you see from an expression, from the layers, isn't who you really are. Who you really are is the power to make change by living the unlimited potential that lies within you, by cultivating these qualities, by cultivating compassion and joy and harmony. Living life through harmony means living in harmony, literally. You have to learn how to make your thoughts and feelings be harmonious. They say peace begins within. Most people say, that's a nice thought. What does that mean? If we want to know what peace begins within stands for, it means we have to make our thoughts and feelings peaceful. That's all there is. Cultivate these thoughts of unconditional love. Cultivate these feelings of unconditional love, because all you're really doing is expressing yourself in an ever-growing, unlimited way of being. Live life in a limitless fashion. Live life as if this were the only moment, with responsibility and intent. Of course, we never want to go beyond that. How we can do that is to begin to bring ourselves into a process of like visualizing and meditating. We actually go into a quiet process, maybe a couple of times a day or whenever it feels good for you. You go into a safe place and you learn how to quiet down your mind. Learn how to basically bring your thoughts into a greater sense of peace. With that, we'd like to move into a little bit of an example of a meditation. First place you start with anything, a great place to put yourself is just take a deep breath. Because wherever you're in stress, whenever you're in problems, wherever you're having challenges, the best thing you can do for yourself is to take a deep breath, because that's the quickest way to relax. Because that brings you right now, right in the here and now, this now moment. So I'd ask you to just begin to relax. Take some deep breaths. Just kind of let go. Don't worry about what we've covered, what we may cover, or anything else. Just begin to let go, let your thoughts and minds become more relaxed, and then just allow your eyes to begin to gently close down. We're going to be taking you into a guided, safe place, a visualization that you can use as a technique anytime you want, as a way to get you a little bit closer to this notion of love. Just find yourself kind of taking deep breaths, and then as you feel comfortable, lower your eyes, and we're going to place you into a grand hallway. And in this grand hallway, fill it with what you want. See beautiful carpet before you and beautiful furniture, whatever makes you comfortable. You get to decorate it. Bring yourself into the beginning of that grand hallway and just start to slowly walk through it. And as you meander down the hallway, you begin to notice a double set of doors at the far end. This double set of doors all of a sudden start to show the word love written across in like fiery white letters, which kind of beckons you closer, brings you closer to it, and makes you want to go explore what this notion of love really is. Find yourself just coming up to these doors as they begin to open, kind of drawing you in because they need no key, they're always there, always open. Just kind of have yourself surrounded by beautiful white light, and find yourself in the center of this space, surrounded by beautiful white light. And as you're there, just begin to notice, start to see visual pictures of who you were as a child, as who you were as an adolescent, a young adult, all the people, all the places, all the experiences you encountered. Just notice them and let them go. Forgive them and let them go. Watch these images kind of become more current. Start to see the people and places and things that are in your life right now, all the people that are around you, helping you, teaching you, giving you reasons and opportunities to grow. Just see these people and love them and thank them. And as you bring yourself around, you start to see glimpses of who you can become, glimpses of all the possibilities that you're yet to going to encounter. And as you find yourself, just relax and see a grand mirror standing before you, and just stand before that mirror and see yourself as if for the first time, beyond that which you think you are, and just look into that mirror and allow yourself to feel love for self. And see if you can't say to yourself, staring there in the mirror, I love myself unconditionally. Just feel what it feels like to be able to say those words to yourself as if for the first time, and just to connect with you. And as you do that, you want to begin to bring yourself around, feeling this feeling of love. You just find yourself kind of coming back into the hallway, bringing the love, this unconditional love that you've experienced, bring that back in with you into the hallway. Bring yourself back into the hallway, bringing that love, that brief experience of touching yourself in the mirror. And as you bring yourself back here, just find yourself with your eyes opening. So in this last section, what we'd really like to do is start to give you reasons why all this unconditional love works. We'd like to give you purpose, why all of this makes a difference. Because in fact, we all connect on some level, and we all have impact. We've always all connected, and we've always all had impact. It's just because in the past, we didn't necessarily hold ourselves in some of these more unconditional loving ways, more positive ways. Some of the impact we've had wasn't as positive. We were angry or critical or hateful or biased or prejudiced, whatever it was, self or others, our impact wasn't as strong. But now that we know that we can love, and we can love unconditionally, we can start to have a completely different type of impact. We can start to have a positive impact. We can start to change ourselves, and in that, we will automatically begin to change others around this planet. Because in fact, think of it. When we're in the grocery store, for example, any kind of store, and we're standing in line and we're seeing ourselves there and somebody else is maybe not in quite that great space, we have an opportunity. We can either add to their not great space, or we can choose to love. And if we come from a love and we just choose to maybe be silent, maybe smile, maybe radiate a little bit of joy, and say, well, that's fine, that's their world, but it doesn't have to be my world, and it is my choice because I create my reality, so why should I have to buy into theirs? If we start to smile, if we start to have that inner feeling of love, maybe draw a smile out of them, and as we draw a smile out of them, they may go home and have impact on the person at home with a smile, and as they have impacted home with that smile, that person may go out to another store and then reach another person, and then that person may get on an airplane and fly to another country. And all the while, the same smile is being carried all the way. The smile that we generated is being carried to other parts of this planet. Think of the planet as more like a vivarium, not a terrarium. I had to look this one up. Terrarium is the thing we had in the 70s with the plants and stuff. A vivarium is like an enclosed, fully enclosed bubble. And think of it as if all the thoughts and feelings we have are kind of enclosed, which means everything that is there is balanced with a negative or positive way. And each time we choose to be more positive, we add to that positive side of the scale. Each time we end up being more negative, we add to that negative scale, which means we have the power because positives will always counteract the negative. They balance, they get rid of them. Positive thoughts, positive feelings always do that. As we make a more positive approach in our life, we start to change the very balance of that activity on this planet. Well, that's pretty powerful. That means little old us here, because a lot of us don't have a lot of self-worth. We don't have a lot of self-esteem. I didn't. I had some great images. I had a lot of things in the outer that made me feel powerful, wearing the right thing at the right time, doing the right thing at the right time. And yet the personal self-esteem, the personal self-worth really wasn't there. The self-confidence wasn't there because it was all outer. But as I started to change that, as I started to grow inwardly, started to cultivate, realized, like, why wouldn't I want to love? Because if I love that I'm giving out and I'm going to get love back, now I've all of a sudden answered the question. If I want to experience love in the world, then I have to be the one generating it, which means I have to love me, lock, stock, and barrel, right here, right now. I have to love all of me. That's that word again, unconditional. That's that word of being unlimited, unconditional love, an unlimited way of being. Yet it's so easy because, in fact, we've trained ourselves to be negative. We've trained ourselves to be the way we have become with all these little tiny choices. Why not shift that? Same choice process going on, but now we're going to be more conscious. We're going to pay attention to those thoughts, all those little errant thoughts we used to let go away, those self-doubts, those self-criticisms, those opinions about others. Let's capture those and say, no more. You have no more power. That was a nice thought. We're going to take it more positive. I'm not going to have an opinion about another person. I'm not going to hold these objectives, because isn't it true that a lot of times we hold opinions and perspectives about people or places or things, and in reality, they aren't quite what they make themselves out to be? Or say, for example, as we're driving down the street and the two of us in the car and I'm looking out the left, I'm seeing all the stuff that's going on the left. Well, my passenger, who's right there next to me, may in fact be looking out to the right. And in looking out to the right, seeing a completely different view. Even if they looked in the same direction, our own personal accumulation of thoughts and beliefs and perspectives will draw our attention to different things. We are completely unique. And that's the beauty. That's what life is all about. That's what we're here for. Each of us has a unique perspective on life. And each of us has unlimited power within and unconditional love within. It's never been anywhere else. It's always been within us. What we're looking now is to say, why not cultivate it? Why not bring it out? Why not make the world a nicer place, not out of some altruistic goal? Because that's where a lot of people, I think, get trapped too. It's not altruistic. It's not selfish to be loving, especially selfish to be loving self. It's a very selfless act. Because when in fact we are loving self, and we're talking about a little bit higher love, this is not an ego gratification love. We're talking about a more inspired love. Some of these qualities, when we're just loving ourselves by being harmonious or being peaceful, that type of love is very selfless because we're having impact with everybody around us. Which means, of course, This is another little piece that kind of challenges people, because we could live life as a struggle, right? Or we can live life as a challenge. A lot of people say life is hard and difficult. The moment we say that, we have to have a thought and a feeling first. Just like if I smile. I say, now smile, and what's happening? Thought and feeling first makes the smile. Thought and feeling first makes the physical object. Thought and feeling first creates the outer reality. Which means if we want to create a different reality, this is a big word that's called change. We have to be willing to change. We have to be willing to grow. We have to be willing to evolve. We have to be willing to become this unlimited potential that is within us. We have to be willing to see who we can become. When I started this process, previous to starting this process, I had no idea, not even a clue, no even distant dream of a possibility to be doing what I was doing. And yet, because I came from the business world, because I came from the management world, because I was in a reality that didn't fit well with me, because a lot of the managers and the people that were around me didn't necessarily embody nice, respectful, loving experiences. I didn't necessarily get it, and I was told not to necessarily give it. People were, classified. That didn't work for me, so it was not surprising that I wouldn't last very long. So I decided to go into more of like a business consulting frame, and yet before I could even bring that on, I thought, well, businesses are made up of people. Governments are made up of people. Communities are made up of people. Countries are made up of people. Where the changes are going to come from are from the people. From you and you and you. The changes are coming from the inside. That's how the wall came down in '89. It was the people within these countries that could no longer be limited in those ways. They had more to express than they were being allowed to express. We are unlimited creatures. We don't want to be limited. We want to share our love. We want to give. And yet we haven't fully known what that was, and this is more of a practical approach. So doesn't matter where you've come from, what your background is, how you've gotten to this point. Hopefully these ideas can add to and make more of your personal experience. Because still, on this connected level, we're all human beings. It doesn't matter where we are or what package we come in this planet. It matters not. We all have the same experience of breathing, hopefully. We wouldn't be here if we weren't. Laughing, crying, sharing, and caring. We're all connected. We need to remember that. It doesn't matter who's before us and what they seem to be. We are still connected. We are, in fact, if you would like to think of it, as unlimited beings, we're kind of angels in disguise. We're actually angels within ourselves because, of course, when we're dealing with unconditional love, that's one of the images that pops up. Angels have unconditional love. But how many people are willing to say, we personally have unconditional love? We have just as much potential to cultivate that love and become. We have just as much power to love unconditionally as so-called an angel. So in fact, what would happen if we start seeing the people around us as angels in disguise? That would change it, wouldn't it? We'd start seeing people very differently. We'd say, that opinion about what that person was wearing doesn't matter so much anymore. Or what that person just did doesn't matter so much. Because in fact, once we've had the experience, it's in our past anyway. Why not let go of it? Stay fresh. Look at everything as if life was a brand new beginning, because in fact, every moment of every day is a new beginning. It doesn't matter where you've come from. It doesn't matter what you've created that was not so nice in the past. It just doesn't matter. You may find other people tell you that it matters, but does that matter? Their scripts and their opinions really in this case shouldn't matter, because if you know who you are, if you know your truth, if you dare to dream good dreams, not sleepy dreams, daytime dreams, good, positive, powerful, loving dreams. In other words, the dreams of your potential. To do things that really bring you joy in your life and to put your joy back into the life, whether you're in a civic organization or whether you're in a political or public or private business, whatever it is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, you can add love, self-love first, because that's your point of power. And then as you give that love out, no matter where you're at, no matter what job is before you, you can still come from a state of love. And when you do that, you will see magical transformations around your life. You will see things changing because you're changing. It's not a result or an effect. You're now the cause. You've always been the cause. I reiterate that because we have a tendency to blame. We have a tendency to be victims. We have a tendency to think that other people do things to us, where in reality, we're creating it on some level to teach ourselves. One of the finest examples is people will bring up is say, well, what about when I was at such and such intersection and so came from some side, I had no way of knowing that that was going to happen, say involves an accident or something. I would always say, though, what brought you to that intersection at that moment? All these little choices, we're the one that get up in the morning, we're the ones that get in the car, we're the ones that drive the direction we drive, the speed we drive. We can't get away from the fact that we create our reality. We can't get away from the fact that we have the power within us to create a different reality. That in fact, all these things that we blame and victimize other people or feel victimized or blamed to us, we're the ones doing the feeling. We can't be hurt or harmed. No one can hurt or harm us. We're just dispelling these myths all over the place. They'll tell you fear isn't real, and I'm telling you, you can't be a victim. Why would you want to be? Victim mentality is the feeling hurt or harmed, and yet it's us that's feeling that. And I understand. I am compassionate to some of the challenges that we face every day. Very compassionate. I have heard the many and the awful things. Some really great stories, some really not so great stories. Some things that would just bring tears to us because we can't imagine how somebody could go through that. And yet, no matter where a person has been, no matter what a person's gone through, they still have their internal power. They still have the power to go and become more than that. In this particular instance, I have a very near and dear person and very near and dear relative who encountered a very traumatic disease and was told that she was going to have to pass, possibly because this was untreatable. Now, in the surface, you could just believe it. In the surface, you could just deal with it from a doctor's perspective. You go for the time period. And yet, because of it, I started going to support meetings, cancer support meetings. And in these cancer support meetings, I found that there were these groups of people who were coming to the support meetings, and as they came in, if they came with the fear and the doubt and what the doctor said, they would often be gone to the day that the doctor told them. But if they came in with that little spark of something else and said, I want to live, I want to find out what life is all about, with that, they brought themselves through an opportunity to make change. Now, when that process goes through, and of course we want to make change, we start wanting to live, we have to start looking at ourselves. We start looking at ourselves, we have to clean up some of that emotional baggage because truly there's got to be a mind-body connection in some level. We're kind of proving it through the physical, but then there's also the reality that our bodies have trillions of cells in them, which change in less than a year, which means last year's body is not this year's body, which means for a cancer patient, for example, last year's tumor is not this year's tumor. Something else is keeping it alive. What is keeping it alive is our thoughts and feelings, if we believe it to be true. If we believe one of the reasons why diets won't work is because people don't change their images. They see themselves a certain way. They feel a certain weight. They feel a certain size. If they don't change the habit, if people don't change the thoughts and feelings, if they don't love themselves enough, it never really changes. The true successful examples make change in their thoughts and feelings first. They change their personal image. Cancer patients have that power and possibility also. They have the power and possibility to at least have a better quality of life by letting go of some of the old emotional baggage. Now, that person who went through cancer for many, many years and who in fact came to a point of dealing very diligently and very directly with some of the very traumatic events, which were awful, need not repeat them because we all have our own story, but in their own case dealt with them, forgave them and released them. That was my mother. A lot of what I've come to know was in a catalyst brought together by the experiences of all these various people who were going through traumatic events and how they could come through and change and grow and become more. And she's living quite healthy and wealthy and happy here today. Power of thought and feeling to create our reality. Well, we've been creating our reality all along. What we're doing now is shifting. We're saying, what kind of reality do we want to create? Who do we want to become? We can take a path of joy. It doesn't have to be struggle. It doesn't have to be difficult. We can choose to make our decisions through joy. Even if you've never heard that before, you have that power and potential in you. Why not choose each moment through joy? Why not honor self? Do the things that honor yourself, that nurture yourself. Do the things that take care of you. Do the things that make you feel good, not things that are destructive to you that give you temporary happiness, but the things that really bring you happiness, like a good, solid, warm soak in a bathtub, things that are very nurturing. Bring those things out. Honor yourself. It truly is a new era on this planet. It is the dawn of the heart. We're coming into a new day where the love that is in us is beginning to be expressed outside. And we, each of us, are doing it. We are the ones that are bringing about the dawn of the heart. We are the ones that are bringing about the opportunity to love, consciously and directly. Self-love, give that love out. Unconditional love truly is an unlimited way of being. And when we go for it, practice it, find out what it is for us personally, when we take that journey and truly learn how to live, we begin to bring a complete new reality. Yes, there are changes. Yes, there are obstacles. We all go through them. We're going through them anyway. Why not find a different way to go through them? Why not have the potential of some really grand results towards the end? Unconditional love is an unlimited way of being. And I thank you.
Let's just say that you and I are having a difference of opinion, and that I'm practicing or working in the direction of unconditional love, and I realize that in my now moment, this is going nowhere, and I try my best to stop the argument or the difference of opinion by not trying to involve myself in it, but you're still determined to make sure that I understand your point of view. What's to keep your now moment from affecting me and transferring over to me while I'm working my best effort to keep the unconditional love attitude?
Practice, practice, practice. You will find over time that when you do practice it, when we truly let go, the arguments will cease. Because if we don't fuel it, there's no place for them to go. Now, we may walk away, or what may be even more interesting is they may walk away. Because if we don't fuel it, there's no energy. If we give in to it, we give it, we add to it. A person doesn't like to really argue. We do enough arguing ourselves. But people that want to argue in the outer, they don't want to argue with themselves. They want to argue with other people. When you have an experience like that, to the best of our ability, if we can come from that love, something will shift. Because if we stop playing the game, if we stop playing the negativity game, there's no more players other than the other person.
Yes, it sounds like meditating is a key point of your program. For those of us who have not meditated much in the past, would you have some tips for us to successfully integrate that into our lives?
Definitely. Meditation was something that I heard a lot about early on in my own kind of like new unfolding. And I avoided it with a vehemence because it was just like the time and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't connect very well. It's come to a point now where I really can't do well and function without meditating twice a day. It doesn't take long. Sometimes 10 minutes, usually 20 minutes, and a good day 45 minutes, 10 or 20 in the morning, 10 or 20 at night, sometimes 40, whatever it works. The biggest key is to be in a space where you really won't be interrupted. That helps tremendously. You just don't want the thought of the phone ringing or a child running through or somebody opening up the door. If you can create a space where that doesn't happen, then you can go into a space where the biggest part you want to do is relax and breathe. And focus more on that, because there are many, many meditation techniques, and you can seek out whatever you would like. What's worked for me is to focus on basically nothing, except for, say, the breath. Because when we're breathing, we're in the here and now. It's full focus of power. We're physical. We're paying attention to the breath. And then you can just train your inner sight. You close your eyes, of course, and you're just getting to that peaceful state. Let go of everything. All these doubts, fears, everything you think you should be doing, all the things you're trying to remember about tomorrow, what you should have done yesterday. You just keep letting those go, and you keep focusing on breathing, and you start bringing your attention into this kind of area. They call this the third eye. It's a way of just kind of centering. It's a place to put your attention. Because what we're trying to do is quiet the mental mind. And you do that by putting it somewhere and keeping it there. And each time it wants to go away, you bring it back, and you bring it back, and you bring it back. And part of why I think I avoided it at first, because my mind wandered too much. Or I expected some phenomenal results, which never really materialized. All the while I kept thinking something was supposed to be happening. True meditation is doing nothing. True meditation is completely letting go and not having any thoughts. What a break. What a relief.
It was very enjoyable to listen to Harold today. With all the things that we already know all the times, it's a pleasure sometimes just to be reminded of the things that we already know and to put it back into perspective, because we oftentimes forget with all of the crises going around in our lives all at the same time. So it was a real pleasure to be able to listen today and to reflect on a lot of what on much of what he was saying, to put the love back in our lives that we really should be focusing on instead.
It was great and very satisfying. It was totally validating of all my thoughts and all the things that I've been learning. And it was just made real simple, very clear, very succinct.
He was very, very motivational, and I thank him for his comments. If I understand him correctly, what he's saying really is that there's nothing in life that we can change, including death, and that's a mind-boggling thought.